people stay talking about like the creepy stories and scary stories about the Appalachian Mountains, but I never hear nobody, or I rarely hear people talk about the creepy shit that happened in the country, like us country folk that we see. You know what I'm saying? Like right now I'm in Virginia working, right? And the last time I was in Virginia working, this was probably like maybe like 2 years ago. And like I've been here for a week working and shit like that because I travel with work. But anyway, I was working and we was at like this job site that was kind of secluded off in the cut type shit, right? And usually we kind of work from sun up to sun down, especially in the summertime, because we be getting that motherfucking money, we be getting them hours, right? So we out there working and shit. It started to get dark, so we had the trucks on, the lights on and shit. We had lights out there, so it's getting dark. So we know that we all gotta leave because after a while the road's gonna be so fucking dark, and we don't want to be driving when it's too dark outside because it was just nothing but like pitch black woods and shit like that, right? So I remember I told everybody else, go ahead, leave. I'm gonna go ahead and pack up. I'll be the last one to leave because usually I was the last one to leave. So I'm packing up and shit, and I just had like an uneasy feeling, like I felt like somebody was watching me, but it wasn't nobody around because we was in a secluded area because we was, you know what I'm saying, getting this new land developed and shit for a housing development to get put on it. So we was the only folks out there type shit, right? All right, boom, I pack up everything, put everything in my truck, right? I pull out. When I pulled out, some lights got behind my truck on the road. It was like a road. When I pull out, some lights got behind my truck type shit. So I'm watching the lights because I'm like, where the fuck did this truck come from? Like, ain't nobody out here, and I ain't seen nobody out here in the month that we really been working there. You know, you'll see people pass by every now and again, people that live. But if you know the way that Virginia is set up, like when you in the country, you in the country. It ain't nothing around you but trees and old houses type shit, right? So the truck behind me, so I'm like, it's strange that it's just following me. Every turn I turn, the truck turn. And it was like an hour to my hotel because where we were, it wasn't no hotels that I was staying in that was close to where we was working at. So I bust the right, the truck bust the right. I bust the left, the truck bust the left. So now I'm starting, okay, bitch, we playing Tetris. I'm turning, it's turning type shit, right? So I remember I'm going down this road and then all of a sudden, like the lights disappear. But I could still see like the silhouette of the truck behind me in the mirror, like the lights was off, but I could see the truck following me type shit. So when I get to a stop sign, I stop and I'm about to turn off on one of the main highways. And you know, the main highways got cars and shit coming. So when I look back and I get to this stop sign, because you can see at this point because it's lights going down the main highway. It ain't a lot of them, but it's enough where you can really see around you. And you know, I had my brake light on so I could see behind my truck. The truck was gone. So I'm like, the fuck? It literally was a truck following me and then it just disappeared into like fucking thin air. And at that exact moment, I was like, yeah, I'm not staying out this motherfucker no more. I wouldn't even let dark catch me out that bitch no more. I wouldn't let dark catch me out that. I don't know what it was. I don't know who was following me. I don't know why they was following me. But like, whatever type of vehicle it was like old. It was like an older vehicle. Like it was like an old truck, one of those like 1970 something Fords. Like my daddy used to have an old Ford truck. It was like one of them trucks like that. And I could tell because the headlights were like circular. And when it cut the headlights off, it's like I could still hear the truck and also see the silhouette of the truck behind me. But when I get to a place where it's light, the truck was just completely gone. It wasn't no roads to turn off of, none of that shit. It was just gone. Like, if y'all ever heard about some shit like that happening, comment. But that shit was so strange to me. Like, I don't know if it was like a reoccurring thing, but I knew off gate that whatever it wasn't like human. It was like, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Shit.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and godly amounts of paranormal activity. You already know what it is. Have been wearing it every single day. Love it. It's down here if you want. Go follow my backup account. It's tagged down here. Now onto the story. My name is Mallory and I live in eastern Kentucky, deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. For context, my parents put our house on the same property as my maternal grandparent. Us on a hillside and my grandparents in the valley below. Walking distance between us. I have a son, my sister had a daughter, 4 years apart. Neither of our children ever had the opportunity to meet my grandparent. Just some backstory. My mother was standing at our kitchen window, which faces the road, when my son, whom is 3 or 4 at the time, proceeds to tell her that someone was at the kitchen window. What do you mean, son? Whatever do you mean? Without hesitation, my mom tells him nobody was there. He insists that there are 2 people, an older man and a woman, one with glasses and a woman in a dress. Describing my deceased grandparents to her after several minutes of nobody is there shade, my papa and son's name, he grabs my mother's phone. As he tries to take a picture, he looks at the screen and back at the phone, shrugs his shoulders, and tells my mother that they're gone. Just shrugs. Kids, man. There is no porch in front of that window. No way that anybody could be standing there. Fast forward years, my sister and niece were trying out our new ATV. My niece stops my sister in front of my grandparents' house in the valley, asks my sister who the older lady in the purple dress was, standing in the back window of the house, describing my mama perfectly, who, again, she had never met. They were determined to see them kids. My sister immediately came back to our house, white as the ghost she had just seen. Both of our children have seen visions of our grandparents, and still to this day, we all get chills retelling these stories. That's definitely creepy as fuck, but also a little bit wholesome that it's the grandparent. They just wanted to see their grandbabies, you know? Rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I'll see you all the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Another ghost story that my daddy told me. Now, this is one he first told me when I was younger. And we went over it again last year when he told me the last story. He still tells it the same. I can't tell you if it's real or not. He says it is. Well, my daddy really enjoys motorcycles. He loves to ride his motorcycles, whatever they is. And he loves to wear these big old leather jackets. He swear he a part of a biker gang. He ain't. Okay, he just be talking. Well, he says that one day he driving down the street. You know, he leaving a bar or whatever, sees a fine young lady. And she just so happens to be a white woman. Daddy, why you picking up all these white women in Alabama? What's going on? Anyway, he picks her up and, you know, he's like, you know, I just left the bar. I'm about to go woo to woo. He said him and the lady ended up going out having a good time. So they ended up going out having a good time. They get back in the car, and she's like, you take me home? He's like, yeah, I can take you home where you stay at. It's out here in Quincy. He said it was a little cold, so he put his jacket on her to warm her up. He take her back to her house somewhere in Quincy. It was deep in the out there in the country and stuff like that. If you know what Quincy, Alabama is, out there in the country. And he said, I'm so sorry, that was rude. And he said that he dropped her off, and that was it. Well, he went home. He said he was fucked up. He was really drunk. Went home and realized, damn, I done left my jacket with that lady. Fell asleep, woke up the next morning, and decided he was going to ride back out there and pick up his jacket. Y'all, he says he rides out there and goes to get his jacket, goes up to the door, knocks. An older lady answers the door. He says, can I speak to someone? I forgot what he said the lady's name was. The lady's like, what do you mean? He was like, you know, I was hanging out with your daughter last night. I gave her my jacket because it was cold, and I forgot to get it back from her when I dropped her off. She was like, sir, can I show you something? My daddy said, yeah, okay, come on. She led him into the house. He walked into the house. They walked past their living room, and she had like a bunch of pictures on the counter. And he's like, yeah, you know that's her? She's like, that's her? You were with her? He was like, yeah. She's like, okay. They keep on walking through, out the back room, out the back door. And in the back door, there's a big old tree. She walks him over to the tree. They walk over to the tree. And my dad seen his coat just laying down there. He's like, why in the hell my coat laying on the ground? He goes over there and picks up his coat. Why was his coat laying on a tombstone? The lady had been dead for over 10 years. Now, he says true story. I don't know if it's a true story. But one thing I do know is that my daddy has, from my experience and my knowing about my father, encountered ghosts. He does see spirits. But how did that story, did it sound real? I just want to make sure ain't nobody else ever heard that story. Because if ain't nobody else ever heard that story, then I know it's real. So, what say you?
Something in the Appalachian Mountains pretended to be my brother. This story comes in from Casey, and she says one night she was home alone with her brother. Her mother was working the night shift, and she thought her brother was fast asleep. But she kept hearing something at the door. And as she got closer, something spoke in her brother's voice, saying, "Come here, I need your help." This was outside the house, and she thought to herself, like, what? He's asleep. This isn't right. Something just didn't feel normal. So she goes to check in her brother's room, and he's laying there, fast asleep. And she comes back out, and she hears a voice again, in her brother's voice, say, "Come here, I need you to let me in. Open the door. She said in that moment, she texted her mom and was like, Mom, something is wrong. I don't know what to do. And before she could even press send, it said something again, but this time it was in a different voice, a voice she couldn't make out at first, and said, I know you can hear me. Very deep, loud, and stretched out. She said, in that moment, she didn't know what to do. She thought someone was breaking in. She went to go look through the peephole, and there was no one out there. So she went and camped out in her brother's room and texted her mother again, can you please come home? Mom texted back and said, I'm on my way. Before her mom could make it home, she said she could hear it walking around the house outside, but she couldn't see anything, and its voice kept changing to different people that she knew personally, and she had never been so scared. Her mom got home, looked around outside, came inside, said nothing's there. She said a couple years go by, she moves off, she goes to college. She still comes home on the holidays, and once in a while, she still hears voices outside that house when no one's there. What do you guys think about this one? Because, no, I would have packed my brother up in the car and ran. And I know that's probably not the right thing to do either. That's my red flag. Leave me a comment, and if you like spooky stories, make sure to follow along. If you have any spooky, creepy, scary, unexplained stories, send it to my email. It's in the bio.
Shh! Let me tell you a ghost story real quick. In the room that I'm currently in. Yeah, this is where it happened. Story time! So I was just a wee little kid, right? Probably about 7 years old at most. I was sleeping in this bed, actually, in this little bed right here. So I was young enough, my mom slept in the same bed with me. Well, one night, it was like after dark, she was like, you know what, right before I go to bed, I need my cigarette of the night, the last cigarette. Now, I was a little kid, I was so scared, I was like, oh, no. She did it anyways, but oh well. She left the room, and I saw the porch light turn on. So I knew that she was out there, she made it out there. I started getting this weird feeling like I was being watched. Ew, it gives me fucking chills talking about it. I had this intense feeling that I was getting watched, like I was being watched, and the door was wide open, like my bed was right beside me right here, and the door's like shooting that way so I could see directly into the living room. Tell me why. I was looking, and I had the sheets over like this, and I was just frozen in fear because I knew something was coming up. All of a sudden, I see this black shadow figure of a man walking out, and behind him, it looked like he was carrying a body bag. I was young, I didn't know what a body bag was, but now knowing, it was definitely a body bag. He was walking, carrying it silently, walking across the living room, and I was watching, and all of a sudden behind him, I see a small little dog, small dog, follow after him, a shadow of a dog. All of a sudden, that dog turns around and looks at me, its head turns to look at me. I don't see any face on any of these figures, no discernible outlines or anything. Dog starts barking, just little yips. Man turns around, slowly turns its head around behind him and goes, shh, very quick, very stern. And then the dog just does one more bark, barks one last time, and then the man slowly goes to look at me. It was like that type of slow. Deadpan look at me. Now they're both deadpan looking at my face. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the dog slowly vanishes. And then, a few seconds later, man vanishes. Okay, that just happened, so I had to collect myself, because that was scary. Mind you, I was probably 7 at most. Collected myself, alright. So I go out my door, walk through the living room, and directly through the right goes straight to the door. Well, there's podiums if you walk straight to the door to the left. And where that area is my mom's working area. Besides that is the longest hallway in the house. So I make it almost to the last podium when all of a sudden, from the hallway, I hear my mom calling out for me, calling my name. It was only twice, but it was really quick in a whisper. So I freak out. I run outside and I go and I'm like, Mom, did you just call out my name? Or did you see that shadow in the living room? And, you know, she tells me she didn't, and that it's just nothing, that I just need to go get rest, and she'll be inside in a few more minutes. Oh, I had to burp. So, I go back inside, you know, I go back into bed. A few minutes later, she comes in, you know, nothing else really happens that night. And, you know, that's what I remember. Mind you, I'm 21 now, and the shadow, the dog, and the man is still very vivid, and I have trouble picturing things in my mind, but that is very vivid, and I'm honestly I don't think that I imagined that at all, because it's still heavy on my mind. Have a good day.
Tonight's story is definitely the reason I have a newfound fear of train tracks. So let's jump right into tonight's story. Grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachia story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Anonymous. Hey Savannah, I have a story about the Appalachian Mountains if you would like to hear it. I've always been taught if you see something, no you didn't. And if you hear something, no you didn't. But I will say that curiosity got the best of me this night, and I've been really paranoid ever since. Let me set the scene of what happened that night. I was 18, freshly out of high school, when a group of my friends and I got together to hang out. Of course, being so young, we thought we were invincible, and it didn't matter what we did or where we went. There were 4 of us, and we decided to go to a nearby train track in our town and walk down it at night. It was the local legend that if you walk down the tracks by yourself at night with no light, that a man in a conductor's uniform and hat would stop you and tell you to turn around. Of course we knew this wasn't true, but we really didn't have anything better going on, so to the train tracks we went. When we showed up, it was pitch black outside and you really couldn't see much. We pulled out our phones and turned on our flashlights. We had to walk a little bit down this road to get to the train tracks. We were all talking, trying to decide who was going to be the first one to walk down the tracks by themselves. Eventually, everyone in the group landed on me and said that I should be the first one to go since I really didn't think the legend was true. I agreed and said that I would go first. We finally got to the train tracks and I stepped into the middle and looked back at my friends. They were all smiling and laughing, telling me to go for it, but I started to feel really uneasy. I found enough courage to start walking, but told myself I wouldn't go that far and I would come back and let somebody else go. I found enough courage to start walking, but told myself I wouldn't go that far and would come back and let somebody else go. I'm walking for maybe 2 minutes when I turn around to look back at my friends, but I didn't see them. I hadn't even gone that far because I could still see the road they were supposed to be standing on. I called out to them, but they didn't reply. I told them to knock it off and that it wasn't funny, but I still didn't hear or see anything. I turned around to see if maybe they had snuck by me through the woods to get behind me to try to scare me, but there was nobody there. At this point, I'm really freaked out, so I turn back around to start walking back to where my friends were supposed to be. I take a few steps and I hear my name being called from behind me. I instantly turn around thinking, of course, this was one of my friends trying to prank me, but when I turned around, I see a man standing behind me, about 6 foot tall, wearing a conductor's uniform and hat. I instantly felt sick, but then the man lifted up his hand and pointed his finger behind me and said, "Turn around and go back." The man didn't have to tell me twice. I turned around and booked it back to the car. As I'm running back to the car, I feel like I'm being chased. I turned my head to look over my shoulder and I could still see the man standing there in the same spot. I finally make it back and my friends are all there sitting in the car. I jumped in the driver's seat, slammed and locked the door, and look over at my friends. They are all clearly freaked out, asking me what happened. Before I could even answer that question, I start yelling at them because they left me out there by myself, and that definitely wasn't the plan. That's when my friend sitting next to me in the front seat interrupted me and said, "Why did you keep walking when we told you to stop and come back?" I told him that he most certainly did not tell me to come back and that I didn't hear them say anything. He told me that they were screaming my name, telling me to come back because they saw something in the woods walking towards me. He said it looked like a tall shadow figure that had white, glowing eyes. When he told me that, I got chills all over my body. I just stared at them for a minute, and then I told them that when I had turned around and saw that they weren't there anymore and turned back around to see if they were behind me, that's when I saw the man in the conductor's uniform. Every one of my friends just stared at me. One of my friends in the back seat said, "Be for real and tell us what you saw." I turned around and looked at them with all seriousness and told them that I saw the man in the conductor's uniform with the conductor's hat, and he told me to turn around and go back. All of us were freaked out beyond belief, so I started the car and started to head back home. I'm really not sure what I saw, and I've tried to rationally explain it, but I can't. A few days later, one of my friends that was sitting in the back seat told me about one of his theories. He said he wonders if the man on the train tracks wearing the conductor's uniform stands there to tell people to turn around and go back, so they don't stumble upon the shadow figure with wide eyes. All I can say is whatever we encountered there that night is something I never want to come across again. I know this probably sounds hard to believe, and trust me, had it not happened to me, I would probably feel the same way. But I can promise you that I believe in the legend now, and I'll never go to those train tracks ever again. So I don't know about you, but I'm kind of scared of train tracks now. And listen, I totally get being in a small town and not really having a lot to do, so you kind of make up your own fun. But if I would have heard about a legend talking about a man being on the train tracks in a conductor's uniform and hat, telling you to turn around and go back, I think I would have come up with something different to do that night. But that's just me. So I do want to say that I'm in agreement with the friend from the back seat, talking about the conductor standing there telling you to turn around and go back. I'm thinking that he actually is there telling you to turn around and go back so you don't stumble across the shadow figure with white eyes. I mean, that does sound pretty logical to me, so you guys let me know in the comments what you think. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them, and they don't have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. If you want to send it in, you can send it to the email on the screen right here or the email in the caption of this video. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
5 ghost videos that will give you the chills. Number 1. Ghost or squatter. This Reddit user claims that after 3 years of hearing noises from inside his kitchen, they finally captured a photo of what's been haunting his apartment with a night vision camera. A tall figure standing, so clear that most people thought it could be an actual person, squatting inside their apartment. To further investigate this claim, the user recorded a video in night mode in the same area, and they captured this unsettling sight. If you look closely, the figure seems to be moving erratically, almost as if they're paranoid of being caught. While I do believe that this could be a squatter and not a ghost, I think the movements are just a bit too jerky for it to be a human. Some people thought it was Dave Grohl, some said Keanu Reeves, hell, some even said Jesus. To make this even more eerie, according to the poster, their girlfriend was in an adjacent room watching television while this video was being recorded. Additionally, the room that is directly behind the figure in the video is the pantry. However, according to the user, there is no crawl space that is big enough for a person to fit through if it were to be a squatter. Whether it could be a hoax, I guess I'll leave that up for you to decide. Number 2. The face inside the car. This video was recorded from inside an Argentinian hospital after this individual noticed something strange in a parked car. Inside the car, a strange figure appears to be visible. They seem to be shifting inside the car rather than staying still. And as the cameraman walks closer to the door, the figure suddenly disappears. After checking inside the car, it's evident that whatever was inside is no longer there. And given how clear the volume is, if it were to leave the car another way, you would have definitely heard the door opening or closing. However, as he goes back inside the hospital and zooms back into the car again, the figure is somehow visible in the passenger seat again. And it seems like whatever it is, it's looking for something inside the car. And it doesn't seem to be any sort of reflection, because you can clearly see the reflection on the window of the car and see the figure moving behind it. I truly want to believe that it's a ghost, but I can't help but think that it could just be a person with a sheet on top of them with the eyes cut out, and maybe some sort of clever editing to make it look like it disappeared. However, I didn't notice the camera being cut at all. And keep in mind that I am cutting this video up myself, so I will link the actual video in the description. And if you end up watching the whole video, it seems to have been done all in one shot. Do you think that it's a ghostly figure, or could this simply be a hoax? Number 3. Intruder or actual ghost. In this video, a homeowner who's on vacation receives a motion alert from their kitchen security camera and opens the live feed. They're shocked to see a pale, almost translucent human-shaped figure move toward the left side of the room before it disappears completely out of frame. According to the Reddit user who shared the clip on behalf of the homeowner, no one else was in the house at the time except for the dog. If you look closely, just behind the couch, you can clearly see the dog's ears perk up as it stares towards whatever the camera had captured. The ears stay perfectly still, which suggests that the dog never even barked during the few seconds being recorded. What does raise a red flag for me though is that there was only a short video posted instead of a full uncut video. Why the moments right before and after this ghostly figure appears were left out is unclear, and that missing context makes the whole thing a bit suspicious. Some viewers think that it might actually be a home intruder, pointing out that at the very end of the clip, the dog turns its ears as if someone is entering the house. Others have suggested that it could simply be a dog sitter, especially since the homeowner was reportedly on vacation. It's also been noted that as the figure moves to the left, it appears to block light from the hallway in the background, which could mean that we're looking at a solid person rather than a transparent spirit. In the end, I'll let you decide if this is a ghost caught on camera or if it's a real person inside someone's home. Number 4. The Sylmar High School Ghost. Back in November 2013, it was just an ordinary football game between Sylmar and San Fernando High School. That's until a parent who was filming their daughter's cheerleading routine had caught something strange on camera. Did you see it? After going back to review the video, there appears to be a phantom figure running in the background behind the cheerleaders and onto the football field shortly before disappearing. Some people have tried to debunk it as a camera glitch, and some have even noticed that the security guards standing on the field seemingly follow the runner right as they pass by. Unless it could have just been a coincidence or something else entirely catching their attention. The mom did not notice she captured the ghostly figure until a month later when she reviewed the videos. Now, this mom isn't really tech savvy, so her having the ability to alter the video would be completely out of her wheelhouse. Could this potentially be a football player trying to relive the good old days? Or do you think this could be something else entirely? Number 5. The ghostly figure in the woods. The uploader of this video claims that his mother's security camera captured something truly chilling. The uploader's brother was at their car trying to figure out a Christmas tree inside their trunk when the camera caught a transparent figure walking in the woods, even stopping to bend down before it fades away. And the crazy part is, you can even see that it has a set of hair on top of its head, and as it appears in the frame, it looks like they also have either a dark pair of shorts or pants on. And according to the brother, he never even heard or saw anyone, and there are no nearby neighbors close enough who could be walking on their property like that. Given this, it's very unlikely that it would have been some random hiker in the middle of the woods, and even if it was a hiker, where did they go? Some people have even noticed that there's a translucent hand that seems to appear under the car as the brother walks away. So could this weird figure have made its way underneath the car? Some people have even pointed out that the brother seems to be standing at his trunk, almost looking towards the direction of wherever the figure came from for a while. Whatever it is, this is easily one of the most unsettling captures that I've seen that I feel is absolutely convincing. Now that's all the creepy ghost videos for this one. Comment which video creeped you out the most, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification because you don't want to miss the next upload.
This girl emailed me and told me that there was a mimic in her aunt's house that was mimicking her aunt's voice, and she ended up seeing this thing. So when Kaylee was in high school, her and her sister would go to her aunt's house for the summer. When she turned 16 years old and her sister was 18 years old, her aunt moved to a farm. That summer, they got really excited to go to help her on the farm, to see the animals, etc. Now, her and her sister had a room that they would share in this house, and she said that the first few weeks that they were there, everything was fine. She would occasionally get this feeling of dread, but she would kind of just shake it off as to her not being comfortable in a new house. However, that feeling ended up being valid, and what happened in this house was an experience that she will never forget. So one night, she goes to bed, and she wakes up in the middle of the night, and her heart is racing, and she's sweating, and she's terrified for some reason. She doesn't know why. She looks over at the clock, and it's 3 a.m. She does, however, realize that she is thirsty, and so she quietly gets up to go get water from the kitchen. So she goes down into the kitchen, she's grabbing the water is running, when suddenly she hears, "Kaylee." So she's startled at this point, but she thinks that it's her aunt, because it's in her aunt's voice. So she turns around, and nothing is there. So at this point, she thinks that her brain is just playing tricks on her. So she quickly drinks the water, and she goes to put it down in the sink. And as soon as she goes to put it down, she hears this very slow walking coming down the hallway. Just like boom, boom, boom. This feeling of dread that she had earlier is now 10 times worse. So she closes her eyes, and she's just telling herself, as she's hearing this walking slowly come closer to her, nothing is there, nothing is there, nothing is there. And then she quickly opens up her eyes, and she runs down the hallway, and she jumps in her bed and gets underneath the covers. As she's underneath the covers, she starts hearing that slow walking again, and it's right outside of her bedroom door, and it's just walking up and down the hallway, and it's saying, "Kaylee, Kaylee," in her aunt's voice. She said that this went on all night long. She does fall asleep though, and she wakes up at around 8 o'clock in the morning. Her sister is still asleep, but she can hear her aunt in the kitchen. So she goes into the kitchen to say good morning to her aunt, and her aunt says her normal good morning, and then her sister gets up, and her sister walks into the kitchen. And then her aunt looks at both of them, and she goes, "What were you two doing up last night running around?" At this point, Kaylee's stomach just drops, and then her sister replies, "I was asleep." So Kaylee looks at her aunt. She tells her aunt what happened. And her aunt just looks at her and just goes, "That didn't happen." Like, she doesn't believe her at all. And then she tells her, "Don't talk about that anymore." She said for the next week this would happen. She would fall asleep. She would wake up at 3 a.m. She would hear her aunt walking slowly down the hallway and calling her name. It would be like whispering, like, "Kaylee, She's the only one experiencing anything at this point, so she truly thinks that it's just her imagination. Until the weekend of the 4th of July. They do their normal celebration. They have a barbecue, fireworks. Well, at one point in the night, everybody except for her and her sister end up leaving. They go out to do something, and so it's just her and her sister at home. So they decide that they want to watch a movie in the living room. So they start watching the movie. They're about 45 minutes into the movie, and it's about 10:30 at night. When suddenly Kaylee hears, "Kaylee," in her aunt's voice. She immediately freezes. But then she chooses to ignore it. But then she hears it again, and it's a little louder. And then she hears it again, but it's a little louder than the time before. Just getting louder and louder until it's like, "Kaylee!" After that last loud one, her sister slowly turns her head to Kaylee and says, "That's not Tracy." Tracy is their aunt's name. So Kaylee goes, "You heard that?" And she goes, I've been hearing it every single night since the first night we got here. Well, they decide that the only thing to do is to ignore it and turn up the volume on the TV. So that's exactly what they do. And the voice actually stops. Well, a couple hours pass and they decide that they're going to go to bed. So they walk upstairs, they go into their room, and they're just chilling in their room when suddenly they hear the front door open and they hear their aunt go, "Hey girls, I'm home." Now, Kaylee said that it sounded like her, but something was off and she just immediately feels dread. Well, her sister gets up to go open the door, and right before she goes to touch the doorknob, Kaylee goes, "Don't open that. That's not Tracy." So her sister stops, and she slowly turns around and starts walking towards the bed when they hear, "Girls!" And then they hear, boom, boom, boom. These insanely loud footsteps that are walking towards their room. Absurdly loud. And then just like that, the door opens, and the footsteps stop. And then her aunt, really her aunt, calls out, "Kaylee, Jessica." Now, they're just kind of frozen in their room. They don't really know how to even respond to this. So their aunt comes into their room and she sees that they are both pale as ghosts hiding underneath the covers. They're literally shaking. They're so scared. And they tell her what happened. And this time she sits down and she tells them something different than she had told them prior. She tells them that since the second week she moved in there, she has been experiencing the same thing, but it stopped right when the girls got there. Now, her aunt at this point is like, "Listen, I'm worried for your safety at this point. I don't think you should be here anymore." So she calls their grandma and tells their grandma to come pick them up. But Kaylee said that what haunts her more than anything that happened at that house that summer was what happened this night. That night, they all sleep in her aunt's room. She wakes up in the middle of the night. You guessed it, it's 3 a.m. So she sits up and she starts rubbing her eyes. And as she's rubbing her eyes, she feels on the side of her face. Mind you, she is on the left side of the bed, on the edge of the bed, and nobody is to the left of her. And then she hears, "Kaylee," in this sing-song voice, but it's a voice that she doesn't recognize. It's not her aunt's voice. So she tries to ignore it. But then again, another breath, but this time it's coming from right in front of her face. And then she hears, "Kaylee," a little louder this time. Then she feels the bed on her right side shift, and then the breathing just stops. And then she hears those loud footsteps stomp to the other side of the bed. And then she hears, "Jessica," her sister's voice, in this whisper sing-song voice. So she slowly looks over at her sister, and that's when she sees it. It's this super tall, like 8-foot tall, large shadow thing crouching over her sister, just going, "Jessica." So at this point, she's like, "I cannot take this anymore." She quickly looks over to the nightstand and she turns on the light, and then everything just stops. Now, she said that she doesn't know if this was her brain making up an image because of what she was hearing or if she actually saw something, but that she did see something. Just was it real? She doesn't know. But her sister woke up at this point too, and they stayed up for the rest of the night. They could not fall asleep. Now, she said that the next morning, her and her sister left, and that they refused to ever go back to their aunt's house. And that she won't talk about it with her sister. She won't talk about it with anybody. Nobody really talks about it. And so she still doesn't know to this day if her sister saw what she saw. So what did you guys think of this story? So creepy, right? I don't like the ending part where she was like crouching over her sister and saying her name. Ugh, the whole thing was so creepy. The slowly walking down the hall and just hearing your name being called all night long is so creepy to me. I swear, mimic stories really get me. They really creep me out. But what did you guys think the scariest part of the story was? And do you think this was a mimic, or do you think it was something else? Because that is a question to ask. And do you think that she really saw that night, or do you think she was imagining it? I think she really saw it, especially if she was experiencing everything else, and especially if her aunt was experiencing it too, then obviously there was something in that house. So why would her ears not be playing tricks on her, but her eyes be playing tricks on her? You know, that doesn't really make sense to me. I think she saw something. But tell me what you thought the scariest part of the story was, and also your thoughts, opinions, and questions, suggestions down in the comments. But as always, please be respectful.
Hey, you guys. It's Scary Story Sunday. Let's get started. I grew up in southern Appalachia, western North Carolina, about 30 minutes outside of Asheville. The Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest in the world, over 1 billion years old. And when something's been around that long, it holds on to things. Some things are harmless, like the brown mountain lights I've seen before but never felt scared. They just exist. But this wasn't that. About 10 years ago, I was taking a night class at AB Tech. I'd get home around 10:30 p.m. every night, driving my old Dodge pickup. One Thursday, I got off the interstate and immediately felt wrong. Too quiet. No animals. The air felt heavy. My truck suddenly felt small. I've never had anxiety before, but my chest tightened and I could not explain why. The truck stopped by my parents' road, always open, completely dark. I brushed it off, kept driving. Then I hit something. A huge, sick-looking dog ran out in front of me. Thump. I stopped, heart racing, and then I smelt it. Rotting flesh. I threw the truck into reverse to go check. I looked in the mirror. The dog was standing, on two legs, over 10 feet tall. Its skin hung off its body, gray and loose. The arms were too long. The face didn't look right. It was like it was shifting. No eyes, just empty sockets. And the teeth? Too many. Twisted, spilling unnaturally. It looked straight at me through the mirror. I didn't move. Then the light came on by a nearby house and it ran into the woods on two legs. I drove as fast as I could, locked everything, grabbed my firearms, and stayed awake. Around 3 a.m., I smelt it again. Stronger this time. I went into my dad's office. There are glass doors that look out into the forest, and I shined the light outside. It was standing at the edge of the woods, watching. I turned on the floodlights. Now it was closer, between the trees and the house, still just staring. I opened the door and fired every round I had. It screamed like a person and ran. After that, everything went back to normal, until years later. My wife and I were walking her dog back from the kennel one night, and it felt it again. The same dread, the same smell. She joked about it until she saw my face, and then we heard something behind us, barking, exactly like her dog. But her dog was right next to us. Whatever it was mimicking him and getting closer. We ran, and as soon as we reached the house lights, I saw something stop at the edge of the darkness, then disappear. I told her everything that night. Her family didn't laugh. They blessed the property the next morning, and whatever that thing was, we never saw it again.
Imagine checking your trail cameras and find this staring back at you. Some people believe the old witches of Appalachia never really died, and this video may prove that. Trail cameras are becoming one of the most vital pieces of equipment to catch things natural and unnatural. I personally have used them for many years, and I haven't really caught anything too extreme, but some people do. I want you to pay really close attention because you're going to see something come out of the darkness toward the camera. Maybe it's a witch, maybe it's a ghost, maybe it's not real at all. Then, a few moments later, something else came crawling out of the darkness. I want you to watch this and tell me in the comments, what do you think this is? Is it a hoax? Is it a witch, a ghost, or something else? Let me know in the comments what you think. Have a great day. God bless.
Okay, so my mother-in-law is staying with us for a little while, and she explained to me this morning that she slept a little bit better last night, despite the fact that someone was up pacing around. Wasn't me. Yeah, I'm a light sleeper. If it was my husband, I would have woken up, and I did not. So, and he did not pace back and forth. So she sleeps down in the basement area that we finished, and she said that she heard this pacing back and forth in between like the kitchen living room area. It's an open concept. I was like, are you sure it wasn't my dog? You know, our dog, Maisie. She's a little Shih Tzu. But if that's the case, I would have woke up because you can hear her little clacking on the hardwood floors. So, yeah, happy Monday.
I used to babysit for a wealthy family, but their baby didn't sleep, and that was actually the least creepy thing about him. I have reason to believe that he was something or someone much older. This spooky scary story time was submitted by Rachel, and she says back in the 1990s, she was home from school break for the summer, and she answered a White Pages ad for a family in Belmead, Tennessee that was looking for an experienced babysitter, and they required references, but they also paid extremely well. It was $20 an hour, which back then was like winning the lottery. If you're new here, this is Spooky Scary Storytime, the series where we share listeners' allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unsettling things that they've ever experienced. And Rachel says she was 19 when this all happened. She answered the ad she knew about Belmead because Belmead is old money. like real old money with winding streets and stone houses that look like they've been there since the Civil War with ivy climbing up the sides. I live in Nashville. I can attest to this. But Rachel knew of the area even though she didn't live in Belmead because her grandmother used to clean houses in Belmead in the 1970s. She answers the ad and she calls and she leaves a message on the family's answering machine. And the family calls back the same day, and on the phone is the mother, and she sounds sort of nice but also very professional and sharp. And the mother asks if Rachel has experience with infants, and Rachel says she does. And she says, okay, cool, it pays $25 an hour in cash. And Rachel says, oh, the ad says 20. And the woman says, okay, well, we can do 20 if you want. And Rachel's like, well, no, I'll take the 25. And she's like, I felt like I knew that money was not an issue for these people at all. But the woman says that they want to meet her before they agree to let her babysit their child, which is understandable. So Rachel goes out to their house the following day. Rachel pulls up to this massive Tudor-style mansion, and she said it had original stained windows, and when she stepped inside, it smelled like old books. There were bookshelves lining the walls. There was fine art hung in beautiful frames all over. The place was spotless. The dad answered the door, and he was gray-haired, and he looked powerful and clean-cut and important. He says, oh, my wife handles these things, and he calls for his wife, and she comes down this wooden winding staircase, and she's got a bob, and she's wearing like a power suit. Finds out that the dad is an attorney and the mother is in politics. She's not a politician, but she works with politicians. And also all around the house are photos with them with like senators, a vice president, and even some foreign leaders that Rachel recognized from the news. Said being in this house was unlike anywhere she's ever been before, and it was a lot. But they were nice enough, and they're telling her that they're looking for someone for Friday nights because they either want to have date night or they have other commitments, and can she be available? And they're always home by 10 p.m. Need her for like 3 or 4 hours every Friday. And she's like, perfect, I can make that work. And they're like, cool, let's meet the infant. Which, mind you, they called him the infant. They did not call him by name. She thinks that's a little odd, but she follows him upstairs, and they walk inside the nursery, and he's in this antique-looking crib. An 8-month-old baby boy, he's wide awake, he's sitting up in the crib, and he's got these huge dark eyes that are just staring at her when they enter the room. She walks over, she says some baby talk, like, hi, what a little cutie, or something like that. The baby did not smile, he didn't fuss, he just stared at her, and the mother kind of laughs, and she's like, oh, he's a little bit socially awkward. Or something like that. She kind of explains his behavior away, and Rachel's like, okay, well, what about bedtime? Like, do you guys have him on a sleep schedule, or what's going on? And the mom says, no, he doesn't really sleep. She says, don't worry too much about bedtime. We're not really concerned about that. We'll handle it when we get home. We're always home by 10. So she goes, oh, okay, that's fine. And she goes, what's his name? And both the parents start to say a different name at the same time, and they kind of give each other a look. Mom says, oh, his name is very formal. We just call him Thomas. Which is not the real name of this child, but I'm just inserting a name for storytelling's sake. But it's something generic like that. So the dad says, does everything sound good? Can you be available this Friday? And Rachel says, sure. And he's like, perfect. We'll see you then. So Rachel pulls up at 5:45 on Friday to start her shift at 6. She walks in. The father hands her an envelope full of $200 cash for incidentals, he says, for her few hours pay and to order a pizza because he says they don't keep food in the house because they eat out a lot. She's like, perfect. They're out the door. She goes up in the room. The baby's still sitting up in his crib, just staring at her. She says she took him out. She read him a book. She played with him. And the entire time, he didn't smile. He didn't fuss. He didn't make a sound. She noticed that he didn't really like to be held. It didn't seem like it anyway, because anytime she picked him up, he would sort of go stiff in her arms. And the only thing that he seemed to care about was a weird little carved pendant that he wore on a leather cord around his neck. At first glance, Rachel thought it was a teething toy. She had seen such a thing on other babies that she had babysat for, but never one that looked like this, because this was a strange little symbol carved into what seemed like stone with too many teeth and weird symbols carved into the sides. She didn't know what the symbols were, but she thought it reminded her of something from National Geographic. Like ancient hieroglyphs, but she was like, rich people buy weird things for their babies. I don't know what this is. Maybe it's an antique. But this baby clung to this thing like it was his lifeline. Parents hadn't left any instruction as to how to feed him, so she goes to the kitchen and she's rummaging around, and she notices in the refrigerator there is literally just a bottle of red wine, which she thought was odd to be in the refrigerator, and some old takeout. But the dad did say that they ate out a lot, but she was looking for something to give to this baby, but she found a few jars of unopened baby food, and she tried to feed it to him, and the baby turned his head away like he didn't want anything to do with it. Eventually, when she realized that he wasn't responding to the food or any way that she was trying to play with him, she decided to sing him a lullaby, because she was like, all babies sleep eventually. But he did not. He just stared at her. Eventually, the parents got home no later than 10 p.m., as they said. They told her to keep the rest of the money, and can you be here next Friday? And she said, sure, I'll see you then. And they said, perfect, same time. Following Friday, when she arrived, she asked them about his feeding schedule, and they said the same thing. Oh, he doesn't really eat much. And she's like, he doesn't eat much? And the mom says, no, he's breastfed. It's really the only thing he likes. She's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And she's like, he's just a picky eater. That's also why he doesn't sleep. Rachel accepted this explanation because she was like, I've never raised a child myself. I don't know how this goes. But every time she watched a child from that point on, it was the same. He never ate. He never slept. He just stared at her. Over the next few weeks, she noticed a few things that seemed even more strange about this baby besides his eating and sleeping habits, which were once he dropped his little pendant teething toy and she picked it up and she was looking at it, inspecting it a little bit closer, and he seemed to growl at her. She said it was something guttural. It didn't seem like a noise that I've ever heard a baby make, but it really seemed to bother him that she was holding on to this toy. Another time, she had put him down in his crib, hoping that by some miracle he would fall asleep, and she closed the nursery door behind her and was walking down the hall when she heard a whispering coming from his room. She paused to listen, and it sounded like two people were talking in the room. She peeped her head back in, and he was still just sitting up in the crib staring at her. That freaked her out, but she thought she just imagined it. Another night, about 2 weeks before she quit, a man showed up at the door, and she answered the door. There was a guy standing in what looked to be an old suit. He said he was tall, he was pale, with intense green eyes, and he asked about the boy. She says, I'm sorry, I don't really feel comfortable letting a stranger in the house. The parents are gone. And he says, okay, well, tell the parents that their debt is still unpaid. And she says, okay, well, who should I tell them stop by? And he said, I'm just an old family friend. I'm just here to check on the air. They'll know who you're talking about. Before he turns to leave and get in an old town car, he says, tell them that the arrangement can't last forever. When the parents get home that night, Rachel relays the message, and the parents look at each other and they seem concerned, and they say, okay, thank you for letting us know. The night that made Rachel finally quit was a Friday night about 2 weeks later when she was working, and the parents actually called the house phone, which was a landline, and they told her, hey, our charity event is running a little bit late. Are you okay with staying until 1 a.m.? Father's like, there's an extra $100 in it for you. And Rachel's like, yeah, of course. It's like 12:50 a.m. She's waiting for the parents to get home. She's sitting on the couch downstairs and the landline starts ringing, and she goes to answer it, but it stops ringing. But then she hears a separate line start ringing, and it sounded like it was coming from upstairs. And she was like, does this house have two phone lines? So she starts walking up the stairs and she realizes that the ringing is coming from the baby's room. She had noticed that there was an old rotary phone in the baby's room, but had never paid it attention. She thought it was more for decoration. She had left the baby alone, thinking maybe he would go to sleep since it was so late in the night. But she creeps down the hall, she props open the door, and she looks at the crib, and the baby's not in the crib. But instead, he's standing in the corner, standing up, which she had never seen him do, talking on the phone, and he's whispering in a language that was not English. She said, I don't know if it was Latin, but it sounded like something super old. As I'm standing there staring at this baby talking on the phone, he turns his head around 180 degrees and looks at me. What was even creepier is that he smiled for the first time since she started babysitting him. He said, I could not believe what I was seeing, so I just slowly backed up. I closed the door behind me and I walked back downstairs to sit on the couch because the parents were supposed to be home within the next 15 minutes and they'd never been late before. Said she was sitting back on the couch in the living room trying to make sense of what she just saw when she heard the nursery door creak open. She looks upstairs and on the landing can see the child now walking down the hallway headed for the stairs. And then he proceeds to walk down the stairs as if he were an adult. And his eyes are locked on her this whole time, and he's smiling at her as he does it. And he gets to the bottom and she says, what do you want? And he says, everything. She said the pendant around his neck seemed to be glowing as he said it. And said she jumped up. She didn't know what to do. She was about to make a run for it because now she's afraid of this child when the door swings open and the parents walk in and the baby drops to his knees. Went back to his normal dead stare. The mom rushes over to him. She picks him up. She's like, oh, you guys are practicing crawling. She was almost yelling at this point. She's like, he was just walking. He just walked down the stairs. And the dad looks at his watch and says, no, he doesn't walk at this hour. Which is also a very strange thing to say. Dad says, sorry, we're late. Here's that extra $100 for you. And Rachel says that he probably knew from the look on her face that something was wrong because he's like, is everything okay? He says, but how do you tell someone that their child just scared you to the point of wanting to run out of the house? She called to quit the next day. They didn't ask any questions, just said that they were sorry to see her go. A few years later, she did see their family portrait in the news because they had launched a new charity organization in the state that made a bunch of headlines. But in the story, there was oddly no mention of that child. And she said she still wonders about it. She did tell her grandmother about the whole situation, who cleaned houses in the area. And her grandmother didn't seem bothered by it. She said, oh, you would not believe what I've seen cleaning those houses in the 70s. She said, those people don't make their money like you and I'll tell you that much. Rachel says that's the story that she hasn't told in years because who would believe her anyway?
Welcome back to another episode of Stories in the Appalachian Mountains. This story comes from Caleb. I grew up in a house tucked so deep in a Kentucky hollow that the sun didn't hit the porch until noon, and I thought I knew every inch of those woods. I knew which creeks ran dry in August and which caves to stay out of because of the air inside felt heavy, but there's a difference between knowing the woods and realising the woods have been watching you back. It happened last November. I was out late, maybe 3 miles past the old logging road, looking for a black and tan hound that had chased a scent and hadn't come home. The air was dead still, that eerie pre-snow hush where even the dried leaves stopped rustling. I was clicking my tongue and calling for the dog. my headlamp cutting a narrow yellow tunnel through the fog. I stopped by a massive, lightning-scarred oak to catch my breath. That's when I had heard it. Whispered very slowly, I heard the words, Caleb. It was really faint, coming from a thicket of rhododendrons about 20 yards downslope. It sounded exactly like my mother, not how she sounds now. She passed away back in 12, but exactly how she sounded when she used to call me in for supper when I was 10 years old. That high melodic trill that shouldn't have been possible in the middle of a dark forest miles away from any house. My heart didn't just race, it stopped. I stood frozen, my light shaking in my hand. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were rooted into the limestone. Caleb, honey, come look at what I found, the voice said. It was too perfect, every inflection, the way she dragged out the E, my name, it was all there. I started to take a step toward the bushes, my brain fighting a losing battle with my gut, but as I moved the light, I saw it. Emerging from behind a tree wasn't a person, it was something tall, too tall. It looked like a deer at first glance, but the proportions were all wrong. Its neck was long, and it walked on its back legs with a jerky, hitching motion, like a puppet being pulled by tangled strings. It didn't have a face, just a pale, flat surface, where a snout should be, and eyes that sat too far forward, like a predator's. It had opened its mouth, or what I thought was its mouth, and it didn't make a sound, but the voice, my mother's voice, came out of its chest. Don't be scared, Caleb, it's just me. The thing began to move towards me, not running but sliding through the brush with a sickening fluid grace. I didn't scream, I couldn't, I just turned and bolted. I didn't follow the trail, I just ran uphill, lungs burning, branches tearing at my face and clothes. I could hear it behind me, not heavy footsteps but the sound of something large and soft clicking against the rocks. And that voice, now distorted and overlapping itself, calling my name over and over in a dozen different tones. I didn't stop until I hit the gravel road and saw the lights of my truck. I dived inside, locked the doors and sat there in the dark, clutching the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I never found that dog, and I don't go out past sunset anymore. People talk about the hills having eyes, but they're wrong. The hills have voices. They find the sound that makes you feel the safest, and they use it to bring you into the dark. If you're ever out in the woods and you hear a loved one calling you from a place they couldn't possibly be, don't look back. Just keep walking, because whatever is calling you isn't human, and it's very, very hungry.
So listen to me.
My grandma's told me this exact story over 100 times, but that doesn't make it any less scary. I need to tell you guys this ghost story. The story was sent into my email, and if you have any paranormal encounters, ghost stories, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. She still won't sleep with her door open. Ever. This took place years ago, before I was even born. My grandmother was pregnant with my oldest uncle at the time, and they were living in a small trailer-style home in the Commerce City area of Denver. It was just her, my grandpa, and my great-grandma. My grandpa worked late a lot, so most nights it was just the two of them in the house. She always tells me that the house felt a lot quieter than it should have, especially on the nights he wasn't there. One night, my grandma fell asleep on the couch while she was waiting for him to get home. She was pregnant and tired, completely drained and just exhausted. At some point, around 11 p.m., my great-grandma woke her up and told her to go sleep in her room, so she did. At the time, it was normal for my grandma to sleep in her room with her bedroom door closed. But that night, she was too tired, so she left it open. She lay down on the bed, and she was facing the hallway, and she found herself waking up around midnight. Not fully awake, but just enough to notice that something didn't feel right. That's when she heard movement. It was subtle, but she noticed it. Her first thought was that my grandpa had gotten home, so she opened her eyes, expecting to see him standing in the doorway, but it wasn't him. But there was a man standing there. He was tall, much taller than my grandpa was, and he was just standing in the doorway watching her, and the second she was able to process what she was looking at, she froze because she immediately knew that that was not her husband. Frozen with fear, she didn't scream, she didn't move, she couldn't. All she could do was lay there and stare at what was standing in the doorway, and then he moved. He turned slowly and walked away from her room, straight down the hallway, headed toward my great-grandma's bedroom. And he went into her closet almost like that's exactly where he was supposed to go. My grandma did not follow him. She didn't get up. She didn't check. She stayed in that bed the entire night, fully awake now, listening and waiting for whatever she had seen in that doorway to come back. And then morning finally came, and everything seemed to be back to normal. They were all in the kitchen, my grandma, my grandpa, and my great-grandma, cooking breakfast, light coming through the windows. It felt warm and inviting, until my grandma finally said something. She told my grandpa that she saw someone in the house last night. And before he could respond, my great-grandma slowly turned around and said something that didn't make the situation any better. I didn't want to say anything because I thought you'd think I was crazy. And that's when she told them that every single night she had been waking up to a man standing in her room, trying to tie her up, and then walking away when he failed, into her closet. The same closet that my grandma had seen him walk into. The exact same place that it seemed like he felt comfortable going into. The instant that my grandma heard what my great-grandma had to say, her mind was set. And they moved out a week later. And now, even after all those years, she still tells the same story. Every detail is the same, the tone in which she tells it, the chills that she gets on her arms. And it's mostly because she can't let go of one question. If she hadn't slept with the door open that night, would she have even seen him? Would she have even known? Would she have ever moved out? And would this have plagued her all these years later?
Okay, ghost story time. This is my first ghost experience. It started about 2014 and continued on for a few years. So I moved into a house where a man was already living there. I was his new roommate, so I moved into the back bedroom. He was in the front bedroom. He was pretty conservative, like a conservative Christian from Dallas, and kind of quirky. Like, he thought my tattoos meant I was an atheist. So kind of like taking a stab at things to try to figure me out. And about a month into living there at that house, he told me, he was like, hey, I think there might be a ghost that lives here. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have any experience with ghosts. I was not concerned or freaked out. I was just like, this guy's weird. All right. So I kind of like left it at that. And then he moved out and another roommate moved in. And about a month after she moved in, she was like, hey, just so you know, like, not to scare you, but I think a ghost might live here. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's what the last guy said. And she was like, yeah, sometimes I hear it banging around in the kitchen when you're not here. And I was like, oh, I was like, that's fascinating. I was like, yeah, I've never heard it, but yeah, that's what the last guy said too. So, continued on. I decided to get a dog. So I brought a dog home from the rescue shelter and was trying to think of a name for him. And was having kind of a tricky time, but, within a few hours of him being home, I was like, Walter. I want to name you Walter. He was the cutest mini schnauzer, and he totally looked like a Walter. So I was like, yeah, that's going to be your name. The next day, my landlord came over, I think to pick up a check or something, and he was like, oh my gosh, what'd you name your dog? And I was like, his name's Walter. And he's like, oh, that's the name of the first man who lived here. He built this house. And I was like, So I told my roommate, and we were both like, oh my gosh, the ghost must be named Walter. And so we would like jokingly blame one of the Walters for something if we couldn't explain it. We'd be like, well, it's one or the other. And so that kind of went on, and the ghost never seemed like aggressive or hostile. It just was there, according to these people. So yeah, things continued. That roommate moved out. I had my son. My sister moved in to help me with my son, and she moved into the same front bedroom that these two other people had stayed in. And she started having nightmares that would like leave her exhausted and just very consistently, just like kind of, getting to her. And it's probably like a year or so maybe a couple of years after she moved in, and she just kept complaining about these nightmares. And I had recently circled back to like my spiritual path and was like connecting to my ancestors and connecting to the spirit world. And I was like, maybe it's the ghost. And I was like, you know what I think you should do is, it seems like it's relegated to this bedroom, and you need to tell it that it's your bedroom now and it has to move out. And it could be in the rest of the house, but it can't be in your bedroom anymore. So she called some ancestors for backup, and she sat down and contacted this ghost. And the ghost told her that her name was Gloria. So it was a woman who had passed. And she told Gloria, she's like, yeah, this is my bedroom now, so you can't be in my bedroom. You could go in the rest of the house if you want. And after that night, she stopped having these nightmares. Excuse me. But what was funny is then Gloria came into my room, and I was laying in bed with my son, who was probably like 1 or 2, and I heard this scuffling in like the far corner of the, like near the ceiling. And it wasn't like a rat or a rodent like in the attic sort of scuffling. It was like in the room and not on the floor. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't like this either. I don't want you in my room. So then I talked to her and I was like, hey, yeah, this is not going to work for me. So I told her, I was like, you know what I want you to do is it is time for you to go. You know, your family's passed. This isn't the place for you. I want you to go sit on the porch, and someone's going to come pick you up and take you home. And it was just like this intuitive sense that I had, is like, this is what needed to happen. And she went out on the porch and she never came back. So someone did come pick her up and take her home. And it wasn't that I had like been given instructions from someone who was coming to pick her up. It just, that's what I knew to tell her, and that's what happened. And I haven't heard from her since. But I thought what was really sweet was that she just wanted to hang out there. I talked to the landlord later, and I was like, hey, did anyone die in this house? And he was like, no, I don't think so. He was like, Walter had 2 daughters. One had polio. She was housebound. So that was probably her bedroom that she had stayed many, many, many hours and days and weeks and years in. And that was where she was comfortable, and she felt trapped there, but also at home there. So, yeah, it was fascinating to realize, like, oh, she just was stuck and she needed some help getting unstuck. And that was the beginning of me interacting with ghosts and helping them